Center screen is the implant right here. Two horizontal lines right above my finger there. They had me place a BB on my ear. That's what the bright white dot is. And the dark strip along it right there above my finger, I believe that is the copper coil that serves as an antenna. Just to kind of show you where this is, if my writing device will work here with me. Horizontal line right about there. And a horizontal line right about there. They come to an end right about here, and just before the end there's a darkened area right here that I think is the copper coil, as is seen on all RFIDs, that serves as the antenna. They had me place a band-aid with a BB in it on my ear. That's what this is right here. That's the end of the implant that I can feel with my fingers. And then these two horizontal lines here are the edges. There's the end of it. And that's the implant. The writing device I'm using doesn't work very well, so I've just tried again using my finger, which worked equally as well. But I think you can see it. Zooming in on it doesn't really help. There it is, center screen. It almost blurs it out more when you zoom in. But I think you can probably see it. It's the exact same size, shape as a RFID that they implant into animals. It's the same size, shape, and location as that which was inserted into Denzel Washington's ear in the movie Virtuosity. I covered that on a recent video. And this is a video that I made a couple years back titled Subdermal Implant Summary Part 1. There's also a Part 2. I'll include the link in the description along with other related material relating to the implant. So I'm going to recap some of that stuff about, that whole microchip in my ear thing, that minor detail that I throw into conversation, and without fail I get someone saying, so direct me to the video with the details about this implant you speak of. The problem is, all of those videos were before they wiped my channel the day after I filmed the sun tunnel. So if you scroll all the way down to the bottom of my page, you'll see the first video is me saying they erased my channel today. I'm re-uploading and starting it again. All of the videos where I discuss in detail the implant were before they wiped my channel. So I guess I'll just start from the first. It was April 19th, 2018, and there's something special about that date. Because James True said the gifts of Baal come on April 19th. And I'm living proof of that on two separate occasions. And he said that after April of 2020. So we're coming up on April 2021, and I'm curious to see what might come of it. But exactly 1 year to the date after I discovered my implant on April 19th, exactly 1 year to the date, and I didn't mean to do it, and I didn't even recognize that that was the case until later on when James True says, the gifts of Baal come on April 19th. And it occurred to me, I was like, wow! So April 18th, 2018, I had heard a story on 3 different of the radio shows I listened to. And they're all tinfoil hatty stuff, but they try not to overlap their coverage of the same stories too much because they know that they all their audience runs in the same circles and they don't want to be covering the same stuff that this other guy covered. But all 3 of them, I think it was like
Clyde Lewis, Ground Zero, and maybe InfoWars or something like that. Maybe I was still listening to InfoWars. They had mentioned that the Syrian ambassador to the United Nations went out on the floor of the UN and scolded all of the countries for allowing this to continue, that genetically modified armed Syrian moderate opposition forces by definition, because that's what we were calling them. They were the moderate rebels. No, we're not funding, training, and arming terrorists to overthrow this country because Assad's a dictator. No, these aren't the terrorists. These are the moderate rebels that were in there funding, arming, and training. And the Syrian ambassador came out on the floor of the UN twice on 2 different occasions and mentioned that these armed Syrian moderate rebel opposition forces by definition have genetically modified fighters among them, and that those that have been captured on the battlefield will be sent back to where they came from. And he referenced each country by name. And it was Western powers, whether it's us or Israel or Britain or all of us together in the coalition of the willing, that sent those GMO soldiers over there. And it slipped into the back of my memory for like 2 or 3 days. I was like, oh yeah, what was that shit about GMO soldiers in Syria? And so I Google it and I find an article, a video article by a YouTube page called True News. And they've lost their YouTube page since then. But I'll include a couple other links from regular mainstream Fox News article that says, the title is ISIS, Army of 7-footers? ? And you see, as ISIS, those guys that got all those new Toyotas and black jumpsuits and white Nikes. By the way, people in the Middle East don't wear all black, never have, never will. Those were our guys. You can see them marching the Coptic Christians of Egypt along a beach to their death to be beheaded, unless it's all theatrics. And they're marching these guys to their death, holding them by the back of their neck like this. Because they stand 1.5 to 2 feet taller than the guys that they're marching to their death. And the Fox News guys even say, yeah, man, those guys look like basketball players. How come they're so much taller than the other guys? 2 other videos I'll try to link in the description show one of these giants in our National Guard responding to a fire. I forget what state or what city, but I'll include it in the description. If it's still available, this is the kind of stuff you got to get in real time, or it becomes unavailable real quick. And it's almost like they set this fire in order to get the National Guard to respond to a fire at an AutoZone. Hello? We've seen lots of fires at AutoZones recently. Never the National Guard responding to a fire in a neighborhood. Huh? Posse Comitatus prohibits that. But in this video, you can see a bunch of the soldiers, and they're all lined up along a curb line. So you can see it's not depth perception that makes the one guy look so much bigger than the others. They're all standing along a curb. And you can see how far back they are from that curb. And one guy is way taller than the others. There's one other video that's a little harder to be able to discern because of that depth perception issue I just spoke of, where one of these soldiers walking in uniform seems to stand a foot taller than the Humvee. But the Humvee's back behind him, and depth perception may be an issue. But what gave it away to me is the orange vest, the safety vest that they wear, is a standard size. There might be small, medium, and large. But on the other guys, you can see other soldiers in the same view, and their vest comes to their waist. This soldier's vest comes to here, the midriff of his belly. And if that's the same size orange vest on all of them, then this soldier is a lot bigger than the others, which means they're embedded in our military already and our National Guard. And when I see this, I'm blown away. I'm like, oh my God, we really did it. And I go show my parents this. This was around 6 p.m. that we had sent GMO soldiers over to Syria, and here's some video of what they look like. After I had shown them, later on that evening, I had a tear-drenched, heartfelt prayer to Jesus Christ, begging for something like a Nineveh reprieve, that we might all be able to see the error in our ways, come to understand the truths of the Bible, and not have to be held accountable for what's been done in our names, because that was our taxpayer dollars that funded that, and everyone's like, oh, I'm powerless, that was the government, that wasn't me. Until then, we pretend that there are servants, that we're not their servants, they are our public servants, and they do what we say, until it's time to be held accountable for what they did, and then we say, oh no, I couldn't do anything, I'm their servant, I'm just a slave, they're the master, I have no control or power over them. Until then, we pretend they're our public servants, and they do what we tell them. You can't have it both ways. And so I have a tear-drenched, heartfelt, convulsions tears prayer to Jesus Christ, that we might have the Nineveh reprieve, not be held accountable for what's been done in our name, come to know the truths of the Bible. And that night around midnight, I'm in the bathroom picking zits because I had my ear pierced. You can even see the little dot when I was like 17. Had my ear pierced, and behind my ear there's like a little zit that always gets pus in it that I have to drain, reach back there and pop it. And I'm reaching back there, and I'm like, I feel a little hard spot. I'm like, what the hell what is that? And what it is the size and shape of a car fuse, a small cylinder-shaped car fuse. The old school car fuses. About that long, about that wide. Since then, a video I will include in the link in the description, there is a movie out there, Sid 6.7 or something like that, where Denzel Washington has one of these inserted right there. Same size, same shape, same location. Another link I'll include in the description, a video that I have made since after the channel got wiped out, is the x-ray that I went and had of this thing. And in that video I say, yeah, you know, Fleur Brun, she says that's the reptilian hologram projector. Fleur Brun in one of her videos says that these reptilians have a hologram projector, a cylinder embedded behind their ear. I don't know if I included that link in the description of that video. I think it's just buried under Fleur Brun's stuff, and she's a time thief anyway. But in that video where I'm showing you the x-ray, I'm like, yeah, that's my reptilian hologram projector. You know, like Fleur Brun says, that little cylinder they have embedded behind their ear. Those two will be in the description. So back to the beginning. I watched those videos of the ISIS Army of 7-footers, show my parents, that night have a tear-drenched prayer to Jesus Christ, and around midnight, discovered my implant. The very next day, go show my parents, hey, you want to see my implant? You want to feel my implant? And we're going to talk about how my brother-in-law Justin and my stepdad Doug, oh no, I believe you. I believe you. I believe you. I don't need to feel it, man. I don't need to. I believe you. That's their way of keeping their worldview intact. That way they can maintain some sort of denial, say they believe me, and then when I walk out of the room go, man, he's got some mental issues, doesn't he? Because if they feel it for themselves, then they have to deal with it mentally as a reality. And in their world, they live in a world where their government doesn't microchip people from birth. So after I go up and show my stepdad and my mom this implant, and he's like, oh no, I believe you, and I had to force him. I literally had to get pissed off right there and say, you're just trying to maintain wiggle room for your mental paradigm so when I walk out, you can say, ugh. Finally, he's like, okay. Yeah, I feel it. And so I'm talking to my mom and my stepdad and saying, oh, maybe the next step is this and something else. And they were like, yeah, let me know when you get that x-ray done. I said, no, the next step is going over to Melanie's house to see if she's got one too. my sister, who was also born on the same Air Force base in Yokota, Japan. A day or two later, my stepdad's got a beer or two in him, which is rare, but that's what gave him enough courage, the liquid courage, to go with me over to my sister's house and feel behind her ear. And sure enough, there's a hard spot behind her ear where I was like, right there. And as I click my finger across it, I'm like, right there, right there, right there. She's like, yeah, I can feel it when you bear down on it. Hers is a little deeper, so you can't feel the shape as well. Mine's right on the surface, so much so that when I fold my ear over, people that are standing right here looking at it say, yeah, I can see it sticking out right there. Mine's right on the surface. A scalpel, and I could pull it out that quick. So that was like 2 days after I found it. I went and found the one on my sister. A day or two later, I go over to my stepsister's house. Her husband is a cattle rancher. And I'm asking, before I even tell them anything about what I found here, I'm like, do you guys have like a RFID reader, that you tag the cows with? You put a chip on their ear, and when they go through the stall into the feeding bin, it registers which cow went in, how much grain they ate, it weighs the food. As they go out, it knows how much that cow eats. You got any of those, RFID readers? It's like, no, my buddy's got like GPS type stuff that tracks the cows when you let them go free range so you can go find them again, but not like what you're talking about. I was like, oh, okay. And I left without even mentioning what it is I found. Less than a week into this, I realized this story's it's all turning into a blur. So I write down, on this date, found the implant. On this date, found my sisters, went and talked to her. On this date, went over to my stepsisters, asked if they had an RFID, because within the first week, I recognized I need to start cataloging this and making a diary. That was April 19th, 2018. On April 19th, 2019, again, another 19, kind of weird. I had told my friend Spencer the day before, after, it's like the spirit had cranked it up to 11. There's a lot of details in between that I'm not telling you, just for the sake of expediency to get this part of the story out there. 1 year later, the spirit was cranked up to 11. And I told my friend Spencer the day before, you got 24 hours. The next day, I'm seeing the dragons in the sky in the video that I filmed titled Plasma Powered Thunderbirds Source Video. So now let me back up a little bit and tell you that about 3 weeks after I found, this is a year later, that next April 19th, but about 3 weeks after the first April 19th, when I found my implant, I went over to my ex-girlfriend's house. Amber's her name. And I had showed and told her for about 3 hours, because it had only been about 3 weeks since I found it, maybe even only a week or two. So I didn't have much detail to add, because it had only been a week or two since I'd found it. And I show and tell and let her feel. And there is you can see my finger clicking across the ridge of your ear. It curves in and then comes back right here. That ridge. Actually, it's that ridge right there. Right there. There's a ridge that creates a cavity behind your ear. And after I'd showed her and told her everything I had to say about it for about 3 hours. Oh, and by the way, she's my ex-girlfriend. I didn't know if she had another boyfriend or anything, but we've been on and off over the course of about 20 years. So I figured she'd be interested in hearing this. So after I'd gone over to her apartment, did a show and tell for about 3 hours, had about all that I could say about it, said, I reach out to show her where this cavity is behind your ear, and right as I reach out to go show her, she's like, oh, I got something there too. What? Yeah. Really? Yeah. She has something behind both ears that feels the size and shape of a pin, a needle with a BB-shaped head on it, maybe half the size of a BB. On the end of a needle, a long, thin shaft, just like a needle, with a BB, perfectly round head on it. She has one of these behind both ears. And on one ear, she has the needle with the BB and an extra BB beside it. She's known about these her whole life. Never told me. Even after I found mine and went over there and told her for 3 hours, she was going to let me leave without ever mentioning it. Had I not reached out to feel her ear and show her where the cavity is, and she suddenly blurted out, "Oh, I got something there too," she wouldn't have said anything. She knew jig's up, he's about to find it. Oh, I better mention it now. If I wouldn't have reached out to grab her ear, she would have never mentioned it. Since then, about 6 months ago, I made a video titled Another Lobe Squeeze Challenge Winner. Because I told my family, hey, let's all do the Lobe Squeeze Challenge. You know, see who's got one. Feel your ear now. 6 months or so ago, my friend Dusty lives down the road, 4 or 5 blocks from me. We hadn't seen each other in a long time. I start telling him about what I've discovered. He's like, yeah, I got something back there too. I always wondered. I was like, bullshit. No, I do. Yeah, I always wondered about that. I feel behind his ear, he's got something that's like a small square. That's 4 of us. One of us has it behind both ears. This probably isn't an uncommon thing, considering the fact that I've found 4 people. If it was just me and my sister, the fact that we were both born on the same air base and part of the same program explains it. The fact that I've found 2 others means this isn't uncommon. So, that was from the first April 19th when I found it. 3 weeks later, I show my ex-girlfriend and discover she's got one behind both ears, but a different shape. 1 year from the discovery, April 19th, 2019, the spirit gets cranked up to 11 in me for like a week before I took off to Missouri. And there's a newspaper that I picked up along the way that shows the Mormon temple is closing for a 3-year renovation, maybe a 4-year renovation. And it shows the Joker on the cover with bombs inside his jacket. And if you can read symbolism, you can see they're communicating messages that you and I can't read. But you don't close down the temple for a 4-year renovation if you're just doing renovations. And in that, they were going to move all the people that would go to this temple normally to all these other temples. So at all these other temples, they also engage in renovation to expand it and allow for the capacity we're going to need for these new people that are going to come who would have normally gone to the Salt Lake Temple. So that was 1 year to the date. I get the spirit cranked up to 11. Go over to tell my friend Spencer, yeah, there's all these dragons out there in the sky. You want to come see them? And he didn't really, and that's fine. And I told him you got 24 hours. I didn't know I was leaving the next day. I left the next day. Before I left, I was going to go give my ex-girlfriend Amber, one last chance to be a part of this. On my way over to her house, I'm filming the video that I titled Plasma Powered Thunderbird Source Video. When I get over to her house, I'm showing her, you see all these dragons? Look, you can walk right outside. Here, this is a video I filmed on the way over here just now. While she's looking at the camera, she's like, do you have like something wrong with your screen? There's like a black speck there and a black speck. Do you have like black dots on your screen? And at the time I was like, shut up, just look at the dragons. I'm trying to show you and tell you something here. And it was like she was trying to distract me with minor details and shit. When you look back, it took me a day or two to look at what she was saying. She spotted those black dot craft that I've since made a video of called Plasma Powered Thunderbirds, where I zoom in on it, run some color contrast, and show you something's there. And the reason I call it a Thunderbird is because on what looks like a seagull's head or an eagle's head, there's a perfectly round circle. Perfectly round circle. And she didn't want to be a part of it. She wanted to talk about how I owed her an apology and her feelings, this, that, and the other. Yeah, that microchip, that's small potatoes compared to my feelings and memories that you need to make up for. And she went into this program where she declares herself the victim, puts you on the defensive because you're the villain. I said, we're done with that. We're not doing that anymore. See ya. And she tried calling my phone 10 times after I left. Anyway. So we'll talk more about this microchip. I got a message coming in. We'll talk more about this. The links in the description are of the X-ray. So, my stepsister, whose house I went over to, asking her if her husband had a RFID reader, because I was pretty sure that's what this is, and I want to put a frequency up to it, see if it gets a ping back and writes out a serial number for us, kind of thing. Before I move on, my mom says, and this is before I even told her, when I first told them about my chip, I didn't just burst in and tell them about my chip. Started asking random questions about Japan and our birth and which hospital was it? Was it in Yokota, Japan or Tokyo? Was it on base, off base? She says the doctor's name who delivered me and my sister, Dr. Cabal. Yeah. Dr. Cabal. Like a Hawaiian guy. And she said that everyone else on the military base was like, what, you had the same doctor deliver both of your kids? Like almost 2 years apart? That's unheard of, they told her. She didn't know what I was getting at yet. She said, yeah, they told me that was unheard of to have one doctor deliver the same kids because either the woman who's pregnant or the doctor has moved to another base because they move them around so often. So for one woman to have the same doctor deliver her kid is very uncommon. It's not a random coincidence, but a coordinated, orchestrated coincidence because that doctor was administering what I now look at as a longitudinal case study in which I was an involuntary participant, and so was my sister. So there's a reason you have the same doctor. Even if he's off base, we need to get him back here so he can deliver this kid, so he can file the paperwork, insert the hardware, etc. I was going to say something else. Oh yeah, the X-ray. My same stepsister that I went over to see if she's got a RFID reader I could use worked at a hospital or a doctor's office right down the road from my house and scheduled for me to get an X-ray. It wasn't like a down low and he's got this thing he needs to keep quiet. It was just I need an X-ray. They have me put a BB, I don't know if it was steel or copper or what, but a BB on my ear so that in the X-ray you can see approximately where we're looking at. And they say, tape this on your ear approximately where it is. It's a circular sticker with a BB right in the middle. And they say, here, tape this on your head right approximately where it is so that on the X-ray we know where we're looking and what we're looking for. On the X-ray, you can clearly see two parallel lines that are the tube, the cylinder, two vertical lines, and in between the two vertical lines that are the ends, you can see a band, a dark band, that would be the copper coil. In every RFID chip, it needs an antenna. That copper coil is the antenna. And the overlap with the plasma fire, the microchip, and the Mandela effect is people's reaction, their behavior. And we're going to segue here in just a second onto the guy that ran up to me trying to, on the plasma power, on the telephone poles, trying to give me every excuse under the sun. It's the heat, it's the creosote, it draws it out this way. By the end, we'd gone round and round, and he concedes that he knows it has something to do with magnetism, that it's a bunch of electricity, and told me where I can go find more of these power poles, and that he installed the new power generation facility in Provo Canyon. But before he got there, he started trying to cover up with every BS non-story he could. Just before that, I wish I would have kept the camera on him. While I'm filming a telephone pole, I push pause because I look beside me and I see two people standing in the yard. And I'm filming and I push pause. I'm not sure if I saw them before or after. I wish I would have saw them before I pushed pause and just turned the camera at him and say, oh. But I didn't. I think I pushed pause and then looked at them. And they're both standing in the front yard doing this. A 45-year-old woman and her 20-year-old son, approximately. Both standing a couple feet apart from each other. mad dogging me. And I'm like, hi, I just filming the telephone pole. Looks like I got a sunburn or something. The woman says, oh, I didn't know that was a problem. Oh, no, it's no problem. Just, they all got it a little bit. It's just no big deal. Sunburn or something. And I move on, and I mention in that video that that's what had just happened. Roll down the road, and then this old man comes up saying, what do you think you're doing filming my house? He knew damn well I was filming the telephone poles, but his first reaction is to say, you're filming my house. Like, what do you think you're doing? And that's the context within which he sets the conversation. What do you think you're doing? Filming my house? You know I'm not filming your house. You know what I'm filming here. And it was proven by the end of that conversation. But he starts by trying to attack me. It's almost like, I swear to God, it's like they live. We've got one who can see. And they're all on a hive mind. They get the transit. It's like Stepford Wives or something. When those two were standing in the front yard going, and I'm just filming the pole. Oh, I didn't know that was a problem. I didn't know that was a problem proves this is not news to her. She's familiar with it. She didn't go, oh, what do you mean? Sunburn on the pole. What are you talking about? She says, oh, I didn't know that was a problem. I was like, oh, no, it's no problem. They all got it a little bit. It's just kind of a sunburn or something. Didn't let it throw me off. Kept making my video. The hardest part wasn't acceptance that I have a microchip in my head. The hardest part was the way all these people responded. They suddenly don't want to return my phone calls, emails, nothing. Like I'm dead to them now. It's like Marty McFly in the movie Back to the Future, where he sees his picture suddenly disappearing out of all the family photos. They had to engage in this. Like, take those photos and put them down, because we might have company that comes over and asks, oh, hey, Jeff, how's he doing? So it's like they could no longer even speak of me. I was he who cannot be named. Even in indirect reference from past history stories. Remember when we went to that place, me, you, and... Oh, never mind. Let's talk about something else. Because if Jeff comes up, then we might have to talk about the fact that we're not talking about Jeff anymore. He is dead to us now. I can only imagine Mandela-affected people receive the same treatment and the same thing that's happened over the plasma fires. At first, the plasma fire itself was the freakiest thing. Now, 2.5 years later, the fact that these people all choose not to notice is by far a greater phenomenon to me than the plasma fires themselves. Same thing with the implant. The way people reacted was much harder to process and accept than the implant itself. And I suspect the same is true with Mandela affected. Their friends and family abandon, alienate, and even attack them. Like the old man that ran up to me trying to run his game, say it was creosote, like the two that were standing in their front yard mad dogging me. To keep their worldview intact, they will attack. Just like in the Ash experiments, one person starts to think for themselves and sing a different tune than everyone else, and suddenly others start doing it too. So in order to keep others from doing it too, they know they need to keep this one that's thinking for himself. We got one who can see, and we need to get him out of here before others can see what he's looking at. He's looking at what we're all putting forth great effort not to see, and that's exactly what I was saying before those two agents of the Matrix come up to me, two standing in their front yard, and the old man that tracked me down and said, hey, what are you doing? Before they demonstrated, I was putting into words the behavior that they demonstrated. That people see you looking at what they're going to great lengths to keep out of their worldview, and they will attack you. So the way that I know for fact that my mom and dad know about this implant is because they have still yet to confirm or deny anything about it. And it occurred to me about a week or two after I found the implant, had talked to my mom. The 5 stages: denial, negotiation, anger, depression, acceptance. We're going to talk about that. But after I realized my mom in these conversations when I'm talking about it, blah, 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 she's not really saying anything. She's like, to imply that she's giving feedback and we're having a two-way conversation. But at some point I noticed this and I'm like, so what do you think about this whole implant thing? What are your thoughts on it? What are your feelings about it? I want to know what your dad thinks. Okay, well, maybe someday I'll ask him, but right now I'm asking you. What do you think? I said, maybe you've compartmentalized this so effectively that you didn't really have any thoughts about it. And now that I brought this to your attention, maybe you'll think about it. A week later, I asked her the same thing. Same response. You don't have any thoughts or any feelings about the subject? I don't know. I guess not. I was still in denial. Through the process, I come to the understanding they're both very aware of this. And the only response my dad ever gave me was a letter about how the AI no longer needs humans. It will reach a self-supporting feedback loop where it no longer needs humans. Enjoy your time while it lasts. It'll be a while before we're back here again. That was my dad's only response to the microchip, and it said nothing about the microchip. So I am 1000% certain my mom and dad knew about this the whole time. And with each passing day, they choose to maintain their allegiance to the confidentiality agreements and the non-disclosure agreements and the security clearances that were involved in this operation when they decided to submit myself and my sister as involuntary participants in a longitudinal case study for which they don't know what the variables are. We don't know what you're studying, how you've influenced these kids to test and get a feedback response. And with each day that they choose to honor those confidentiality agreements and prioritize those over anything else, they seal their fate. And I don't want them to now, because like I said, we don't want people on our team involuntarily who just join because of fear. We want people passionately dedicated to the cause for the same reasons that we are. And so after 2 years of silence, don't even worry about a deathbed confession. Your silence is deafening. It speaks louder than any words you could possibly say.
Regarding that part where I talked about the ISIS army of 7-footers and the super tall GMO soldiers, I thought this was pertinent, and I'd throw this in here as well.